So there are many ways to think about a game of Triple Triad, but there are two competing ones that I think really stand out. And the first is safety. Kind of, can I capture and lock things in? Can I play with a high number outfacing? And the second is much more, can I set up combo potential? Either controlling squares because if you occupy them, I have ways to combo, or simply setting up combos in lots of squares, saying you can grab high outfacing numbers, but I will have the big combo at the end. And I do not need mere safety because I have combo power. And obviously, these two views are not always competing. And I was thinking about how Akiyama plays, and I think he does a move type that is quite different than how anyone else plays this type of move, and is really interesting. And I wanted to talk about why and sort of come up with a theory behind it. And I think it has this nice synergy between it has combo focused play, but is also looking to build out safety. And I think it is an interesting combination of the two. So this is a game I've already talked about. You may have seen it before, but it is from the chat tournament, first round of chat tournament 26, Akiyama against Turds. The video I made on this was very focused on the Turds side, but I also think Akiyama did a bunch of really interesting things, and I want to talk about one of them here. It's a truly spectacular match that Akiyama ended up winning. So Akiyama makes lots of creative and inventive moves that often strike me as surprising, but I have this feeling that I've come up with a sort of core theory that it won't hold up to infinite scrutiny. I'm sure there are positions where it's not true. In fact, this position, it isn't quite true, though. The specifics don't matter so much as the general concept. And of course, Akiyama does not make every move following this principle or anything like that. But I think it is a decent explanation of a type of move he makes that often surprises at least me. And maybe you play more like him than I do, and you're not as surprised by some of his moves. But I find a lot of them somewhat surprising. And I sort of came up with a thesis I think might capture a big part of it. Now, I haven't checked with him if this remotely feels right to him or anything like that. It just felt to me like it captured the feeling of a bunch of moves. So here's my thesis of Akiyama. All you need to have a good position is to have set up a big combo square that the opponent cannot occupy on their next move. If you have a really nice combo square, 2 cards diagonal from each other, and you have the combo in that square, if they cannot occupy it this turn, you are doing well. So in this game, Turd starts in 3, and Akiyama makes this move in 5. And we immediately see he has set up 3-8-8-3 for 6. He does not have amazing cards to go in 2. Any card with a 7 or an 8 to the left is going to be comboed by Turds' 4-7-8-5. That controls them really nicely. Anything with lower numbers facing out is also just going to be presumably taken by 4-7-8-5. And, I'm just going to waste a turn. Let's waste a turn as the game actually went. It's going to flip that. It's going to lock it in. Akiyama has really poor play in the square too. And I think a lot of us kind of look at center moves, and I usually do, kind of what I think of as the classical center move is looking to set up big synergies in both squares. The classical center play says combo potential is what matters. And often it's gotten to kind of forced, like you see a big corner and you didn't have any other way to be able to take it, but you had a setup in 5. But obviously that is setting up combo potential, right? It is, can I set up these valuable synergies that will play well later? And this says, I don't really care if I have 2. I have 1 really good card for 6. At some point, this might be great in 6. And that's it. That's all I need that's the first part of what I need for this move to be good. I don't even mind that you have a combo in 6 too. Now, I probably don't want that same card to also be good in 2. It's good that it wasn't set up both ways. But I don't even mind if you have the same combo square I do. All I need is 1 really good combo square in 6 that you cannot occupy this turn. And if we look at this, right, Turds could block the key square in 6, but how would he do so? If he blocks with low out, we take, and we're safe facing out. This is, in fact, a winning position for Akiyama. If you do it with a high number facing out, no worries. 6, 7, 4, 8 covers that too. This is apparently barely a tie due to this very difficult to find move. So in practice, this is probably a win. So the point is, Akiyama sets up one combo square, right? He has a combo focus, but he doesn't need both. What he instead needs is that combo square to stay open for one more turn, right? As long as you can't take it, and you really don't want to go there, because then he switches modes, right? He sets up a combo square. If you take it, he punishes by building out safety. He's going to lock in the card in 6 and have the card in 9 be safe, and you will be very lucky if you survive this. So he knows you can't go in 6 because he can build out if you do. And thus, he only needs to set up one combo square. And I think this is a really interesting idea because he doesn't need to have good play in 2 at all. 2 is a kind of horrible square for him, right? But it doesn't really matter because what would happen that would force him to go in 2? Well, you'd have to go in 6, and he has a good response to 6 in 9. He doesn't need to go in 2. And this is just kind of alien to me because I'm so used to moves in 5 being, I've set up something in 2, I have set up something in 6 that I'm happy with. He's not at all happy with his play in 2, but the move isn't about it. It's about, I have 6, and you can't block 6, and that's enough. And I think it's really neat. He keeps true to the theme the next move. Turds plays in 7, and where can you go? 6 is our really good square. We only have the 1, but we only need the 1. Where would you go to make sure 6 isn't occupied next turn? Well, if you did something in 2, obviously this looks like a terrible move for many reasons, but 6 is a natural response with a Q. If you went in 4, 6 is a natural response with a Q. If you went in 1, 6 is pretty unlikely, but also with so many weak corners and with having, we know Turds has a bunch of these combo squares too. Turds has 4, Turds also has 6. We probably don't want to allow the X. Akiyama, in my experience, is not a player that goes for the X, so it's not going to be 1. Against 9, basically any move is plausible, 6 certainly one of them. If you go in 6 yourself, 6 is occupied. No, so of course he goes in 8. Now this move also is basically safe to Turds' hand. Turds does have a capture, but it is very well punished by a plus wall. But 8 is the square, which is going to keep 6 open the most. So he has this very good feel for, I only need one combo square, and he played this move very quickly, and I'm going to look to squares that leave it open, right? Because for a second turn in a row, he's saying, I have a combo in 6, and you can't use 6 this turn. So even though the opponent has a combo in 6 as well, it doesn't really matter, because he makes sure at no point will they be able to take it, and he's going to be the one who ends up getting 6. Turds finished the game nicely. Turds played here, Akiyama played here, and Turds has this with the clever point that 4, 7, 8, 5 actually punishes the big combo, because it gets a plus at the end for a tie. But it's still a tie, and this also ties. And I think this is the one they played. But just a sort of fascinating thing of, I only need one combo, but I need to prevent you from occupying it. And I think with both Akiyama's first move in 5 and his second move in 8 really shows how concerned he was with that square of 6 and making sure he'd be the one who would get to play powerfully in 6. And of course, if we look at this position, what's the square you play in where it's the most likely 6 will be open the next turn? 2 and 6 are kind of naturally paired. 2 is often met with 6. If you go in 9, of course you're usually met with 6. But 1, of course, his next move lands in 1, and 6 is the square most likely to be left open for your next move. So I thought just at every moment of this game, he said, you can't go in 6, and I'm going to get the combo there. And that can be tricky to do on second turn, because of course, first turn is going to get the last move, and if first turn really wants, has a combo somewhere, it seems like they're the more likely person to be able to land it. But instead, he kind of masterfully made it so he was going to have 6 in the end. So I thought this was a really cool game, and I wanted to look more generally at how Akiyama plays these replies in 5. And it also made me think of adjacent corners, because let's say, do I have a good example here? Maybe we'll put in a different card. Let's say you do something like this, and you're like, yes, I have set up 2 really well. I have the same in 2. They don't have it. I have set up this huge combo square. The problem in these adjacent corners is that they take you, and suddenly that square is gone, and you really have to have a good L to punish this, which is why when I talk about adjacent corners, I talk so much about how you have to plan for the L. And a game I lost to Tezuka, I didn't plan for the L. In fact, I've gotten in trouble a bunch of times against Tezuka when I've played adjacent corners and he has played the in-between square and I just didn't have a good L plan and I have no idea what I was doing. Because setting up a good square in between, it looks really nice, but it can just be blocked. And so I think Akiyama's stuff is kind of that next level thinking like the L of I set up one combo square, but I did it in such a way that you can't just block it. I'm forcing that square to stay open, and I think that's what's so neat about the Akiyama play in 5, and what makes it so different from the ones I regularly see. He also had a game against me. I had a horrible random, but he started in a corner, I did something in 5, and he immediately understood he could just go in 4. 4 was safe. I had a capture in 8, and he could just take in 9, and that was safe too. Of course, it isn't with these hands, but pretend it is. But he just had cards in 4, 8, and 9 that were safe here, and I was immediately crushed. And my move in 5 set up really good synergies in both 4 and 8. Again, these aren't the exact cards, I'm just putting cards there so you know what the structure looked like. You know, I had great threats in 4 and 8, but they didn't matter, because he just blocked one of them, and when I blocked the other, he had that taken safely, and I was super, super lost. So he has a really good feeling for kind of, on either side of it, against a center play, going next to it, forcing the action in a favorable way. But when he plays these center moves, he is very sure not to give you that. Instead of focusing on, I want to set the most combo synergies, it's, I'm going to stop you from blocking my combo square. And I think that's what he does so well that makes it so interesting. So I was looking at some stats. I just wanted to see, does he actually do these 5 things more than most players? And according to data I collected, I haven't added to the pool recently, but I looked at over 300 open random games. And in all the corner starters on those games, corners were met by moves in 5, just under 24% of the time. So a little under a quarter of the time, corner starters, in just from everyone's play, corner starters are met by center replies a little under a quarter of the time. Note, I have more games from the strongest players, both because they tend to play more open random, but also because they go further in tournaments, so I have bigger samples of their players. So this is not numbers. This is numbers that suggest this is generally what top players are around, is somewhere like a little under a quarter of the time. I think this makes sense. There are 8 squares to go in, so if the moves were random, you'd expect it to be 12.5% of the time. It's almost double that, but also it's the most pivotal square. Often it's the only square that can set up against a starter. I think it makes sense that it would be a bit more popular than that, and that's what we see. In 2022, I have 31 games of Akiyama playing open on second turn against a corner starter. And in his sample, he has met a corner starter with 5 42% of the time. So we have 24% of the time for the site at large. He is meeting them with center starters 42% of the time. This includes random games, but it also includes non-random games. It includes tournaments as well as casual play. And maybe if I separated those out, we'd see some other things, but whatever. It looks to me like Akiyama is playing center replies against corner starters at a much higher rate than the rest of the site, and is quite possibly the player who does this most on the site. I would bet he is. I think he has the highest rate of meeting corner starters with center replies. And in fact, if we took just the last few months instead of the entire year to this point, I am recording this, the video will come out in a while, so I'm recording this mid-July. And I'm sure the video will come out in August or something. But hopefully the numbers stay true. In recent months, so the second quarter of 2022, he's been more like 50% center replies to corner starters. So he uses them a ton. He also really often uses them when his hand is difficult, when he is behind. And he has used them a lot against really good players. And so I think we would expect a relatively low win percentage given the difficulty of his hands, the strength of opposition, and that he's using this a lot more than most people do, which normally suggests if most people do it at one rate and someone does it way above that rate, that they're doing it in more difficult situations than other people are trying to pull it off in. And yet, over the 13 games I have of him doing this, he has gone 50%. And that may sound not great given how good Akiyama is, but given the difficulties I mentioned and like who the opposition is, I think it's a really impressive result. And I think anyone else trying to play 5 replies in as high a percentage of their games would be really difficult. Also, my sample is I mostly track the better players, and they're the people that play open random more. So in his results, he has 2 wins. He's beaten Riker and Edis. He has only 2 defeats to Tezuka and Turds, and he has tons of ties, including a tie to Turds. Seto, myself, was up twice. Piggyman twice, and Piggy's one of the best players on first turn on the site, as well as one of the best players in general on the site, but I think especially good on first turn. So I think this is a really good record, and I think he plays them in a way that is kind of unique. So we're going to look at a couple other games he's played, one a win, one a tie, and just talk a little more about it. And again, I'm going to reiterate the thesis, which is and this applies to more than just the starter, right? And the starter reply. This applies to a bunch of other positions, and I think explains some of his trickier moves that he makes. But I want to reiterate my thesis of Akiyama is all you need to have a good position is a big combo square that you know the opponent will not occupy over the next turn. So after you make your move, if you set up a big combo square that they're able to occupy it and you have no plan there, or you seem behind there, that's probably a bad position. But if you can set up a big combo square and make sure they can't occupy it in the next turn, you are in fantastic shape. So I think this one after the starter, the 5 move he's going to play will look like a conventional 5 move, and this is part of the reason I didn't realize for a while that I think he's doing something quite different than most people do, because this move in 5 seems like a very normal play in 5. 4-6-5-3 has 8, 3-5-3-6 has 4. But I think it actually builds into the same thing, because which is the one of those that's really valuable? It's 4-6-5-3 and 8. That is a high number facing out that can be safe, right? That is our money. We really want 8. And they cannot block 8 because they have nothing facing left as high as a 6. So anything they put in 8, we can combo through 4. We may also be able to capture in 9. It's possible. There are multiple ways to get there. But it's really hard for them to block 8. And we have a really good play in 8. We don't actually care that much about having 4. If we have to land something in 4, it's quite possible they're going to just take it at some point, right? They have stuff like this covered, potentially. Maybe they don't want to combo immediately. And stuff like our combo potentially can be taken. And this might be a hard card for us to take. We don't have that many things that beat a 4 to the left. We've got 1 card, and, it's not a ton of options there. So the real point isn't so much that it set up a combo in both squares, it's that it set up a really good combo in 8, and one that the opponent has trouble blocking. Riker ended up going in 4, and Akiyama occupied 8, and this is an incredible position. The solver says this is the only tie, so no one's finding that, or no one's finding it reliably at least. This was played, and Akiyama just makes it look easy. And it looks like this really easy win, but I think it was trickier than it looked. And I think what he really understands well is this looks like it's just a combo setup, but that's not really what he's doing. I have one really good square, and by a really good square, much like the last example when it was the 3-8-8-3, it's a square that combos and has high out facing, so that if you ever land it, it both has the combo and is powerful in itself, right? He's not that excited about having 3-5-3-6 here. It does combo, but it's easily recaptured. It's not that big a threat. The 4-6-5-3 and 8, that's the serious threat. That's the one he cares about, and so that's the one he has to have a good response if you block. And this leads to him making different 5 starters than you might expect. So the next game, there's no plus. This is from a game against Seto. This is the most high-profile place I think he's done this, the Triad Wars 14 semifinals against possibly the greatest player of all time in Seto. And Seto starts with this corner, and I thought it was just so obvious that Akiyama would play here. Now, part of that reason is because I forgot plus wasn't on, so I thought 9-2-8-9 in 6 was good. No, sorry, not that. I thought it was so obvious he played here. Right, of course. I thought so obvious he played here. He has the same in 6, he has the same in 8. He gets rid of a card that has no power facing towards the corner that was just played, right? This seems to me everything you'd want from a conventional center reply to a corner starter. You have multiple sames. The opponent has none of the same sames. It just looks fantastic to me. But if we say our best square is 8, our key square might I can't touch the blue cards when it's not their turn. But 3, 4, 9, 9, and 8. If that's what we're most excited about, and they block that, that's safe to us. We don't have a punish. We're left taking here, and suddenly they at least have a safe card to work with. And I think something like this is kind of difficult for us to meet, because anytime we do something like this, we gotta at least worry about being plus walled, right? So they have the safe card in 8, they've locked in a card in 6, their card in 3 is safe. This is the exact problem. This is the kind of position that center replies to corner starters often fall into, and this position is survivable. You can hold it multiple ways, but this is the kind of position that starts to feel dangerous, especially if you have to see it at a distance. So even though the second turn player had great play in both 6 and 8, one of them was blocked, they kind of had to take the other one, and suddenly all their combo squares are gone, and they're behind and locked in safe cards. Suddenly you're fighting to tie instead of ahead, even though it seemed like you got all the combos you could ask for. So what did he do instead? He used the card facing the action, which really threw me off. It does not set up anything in 6, right? The 9-2-8-9, when I forget that plus wasn't on, I think, that was set up in 6, but plus isn't on. It said, I have 8. I have 8, 4, 3, 7, and 8, and you can't block 8 yourself, because I noticed 8, 4, 3, 7 may suck going down right, but it covers your best number. And if you put out a weaker number blocking my square in 8, I have great play there too, right? I have safe facing out, I'm in great shape. So this was a really kind of strange move to me because it doesn't set up 6 at all, and you had a way to set up 6 and 8, both with sames. That seems so powerful. And yet, I think his move is actually the better one. The other one's okay. Like, you tie with the other one. They're both fine moves. But this struck me as so surprising. Directionally, it's very strange. If you look at our hand on the left, our second turn player hand, there are 2 cards that are for 9. And Seto smartly tried to blank both of them by starting in 9, so both of them wouldn't have good ways to play. I would be so excited to get this card out of my hand. So excited. It does a useful thing. It's not good facing the direction of the game. I just feel glorious. And instead he uses the card that most faces the game, only sets up a same in 1 square, and yet, if we follow this rule, we only need 1 combo square, and we need the opponent not to be able to block it. This does that. The other move doesn't, right? This move sets up 2 combo squares, but the opponent can block and get rid of them immediately. Those combo squares do not last. Instead, this move, we have this big combo square in 8. It's the only one we care about. And if you occupy it immediately, I have free safety. I have a really nice position. And I'm also just threatening to, at some point, go 8, 4, 3, 7, and 8. And notice it fits our other criteria. It's a really good capture, and it has a high number facing out. Now, the other hand has multiple ways to take that. It's not an amazing number facing out, but it's still pretty good. And in this position, Seto did end up blocking 8. He did say, I can't let you have this square. He blocks 8. Now there's a choice between going in 7 or 9, right? You can go safely in 7. That's one option. But potentially this plus wall gets some stuff back. Maybe you don't want to allow that. Or you can go in 6 immediately. I think both are good. He went in 6 immediately, which was a nice move. Wait, do I have the hands in wrong? 9, 5, 8, 6. Oh, 8872 wasn't in the hand. It was 6964. I forgot to switch it. But basically, Seto had to find 7. Akiyama played 3, locking in his card. Well, that looks ridiculous here because of this. So I have the cards a little wrong. But I hope you got the idea. I don't know how I screwed this up, but I'd have to go find it. That's fine. But Akiyama ended up getting a little pressure out of this. He got a little advantage. Seto had to be really careful after this move here. And Seto did find a tie, but it was something where Akiyama played a move that I just wouldn't have considered because I would have looked to set up the sames, and it was a better move. My move probably would have been neutralized quite quickly and easily, and his move got some pressure and took a lot more effort to neutralize. And it's this idea, and it's the idea of I need one combo square that I have good play if you block it. Don't need to set up 2 combo squares. All we need is 1 combo square. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about is just center replies in general, because I think they do a couple interesting things. First of all, anytime you go diagonally from something, you can of course set up combo potential. And because the second turn player has reacted to the first turn player's positioning, the second turn player is the one who's gone diagonal, the second turn player is much likelier to have combos in 6 and 8. That's usually the point. They are more likely to have combos in 6 and 8. What does it concede? It creates 2 squares, 6 and 8, where there's only one out-facing side. So it makes it easier for the opponent to have potential safety. Here, this would of course be safe if it wasn't comboable. And this would be safe if Akiyama hadn't kept on this card. So you concede these squares with only one out facing, and what you create is combo potential. This combines that while of course there are lots of ways to meet a center reply, you can go in the far corner for the slash, you can go for the J, there's lots of ways to do it. One of the most kind of fundamentally important is what if they play in one of the neighboring squares, right? Because what this does is it takes advantage of the fact that you created these one out facing squares. They can potentially force safety. And if you don't have a great card with high out facing to put in the other, they can grab more safety down the road. And second of all, you are more likely to have combos in those squares, so they block the squares you have combos. So even though it gives you a lock-in, it's very logical to block one of these squares. And so I think some players, like myself, focus too much on setting up this combo potential and not enough on what is done if they get rid of the combo squares. Because often getting rid of those combo squares is the most fundamentally sound and wise way to handle it. And Akiyama says, I don't need as many combos. I just need to make sure you can't block that square. And I think this is kind of lovely. Like, he doesn't care that he didn't set up 6 well. He only cares that he set up 8 really well. And if you block 8, he has really good play in 7, or maybe even 6. He ends up playing in 6. But he's probably going to have really good play in 7 as well. And I think that's a neat and different way of thinking, and I'm applying it here to center plays, but it also affects lots of stuff later. Like, there's all these positions, I'm just making some moves, where, like, he sees, I want to go 5, I can't, or just pretend he wants to go 5 here, the cards don't matter on the board. Say I want to go 5, but I can't go there immediately. How can I make it so you can't go there? Because again, all I need is one really good combo square, and thus he finds some creative moves. You know, he plays positions, or even switching colors here. Like, there are positions like this. He finds moves in 1 more than most people, where he's like, okay, I really have a good thing in 5, but if I make a play in 1, I force them to block 2, and then I can hit them with 5, right? By forcing them to block 2, I keep my combo square open for another turn. And I think he is really good at this kind of, I have that one combo square, how can I create a threat or do something such that I will have that next turn as well? And if he can extend that combo square far enough forward, he's going to get a really good result. So actually, let's go back one last thing before we end this video. Let's go to the first game, because I think it's the reason his move doesn't actually work in this example, though Turds, who made the move I would have played, because I was watching this one, did not find the win. But there is a win here, right? So let's remind ourselves what's going on in this position. 3883 is really good in 6. It's really good because it is high out-facing and it is a big combo square. Turds cannot occupy 6 himself because anything he puts there is taken with safety. This makes it a quite difficult position for Turds, and Akiyama brilliantly played an 8 next turn, guaranteeing 6 wouldn't be occupied, and then played in 1 next turn, again guaranteeing 6 wouldn't be occupied, and had multiple ways to grab a tie at the end of the game. Really neat game. This, as we saw, also a tie. But what's the problem? Akiyama's only good square is 6. He doesn't have 2. Why is 6 good? Well, he has a good combo there. We'd love to block 6. We can't because of 9. So the best move in this position, and I don't know if this applies more generally to fighting as starters, this is not a video about, how to beat what Akiyama is doing. It is a video of Akiyama is doing something really cool that I don't really think I've seen before, and I've certainly never seen someone do it so often. But the winning move is to go in 9. And this looks like, 3883 has the plus wall in 9, though that's never going to flip extra cards, so that's not so scary. It doesn't look like that big a move, but its point is, now I'm threatening to go in 6 because you can't respond in 9. And if you go in 6, say, I don't know, here, I'm going to go in 8. And I'm going to have built out a bunch of safeties. I still control 2. You never set up to have good play in 2. We established you didn't need good play in 2. Your point was to set up play for 6. So I think it's cool that, the point of Akiyama's play is not to have 2. It's to have 6 and to have a big play in 9. And it turns out the best move against it, he does have 6 controlled by 9. The best move is to get rid of the 9 square. And to find that, you have to understand this so deeply. So no blame for not finding this fantastic move here. I think Turds played this game really well. I think it's a really well-played game from both sides. But I think it's really neat if we follow this logic out. Doesn't it make sense that 9 would be the key? That getting rid of 9 would be the key to fighting this kind of move, at least in this situation? So that is my theory of a lot of Akiyama's moves. Is I think he doesn't set up as many combos as other players do, but he also isn't just taking safety or capturing cards when the opportunity arises. He is setting up one combo square and then making sure you can't control it. Making sure he will get that combo square. Because you set up a combo square, the other person gets to go next. They can occupy it. And there are lots of positions where, sure, you made a really cool threat, but then they went in between and your plan's over. And he does these moves sacrificing other things. When he goes in 5 here, he's not going 5 in a way that sets up 2. And we saw this most extremely in the Seto game, where he could have gone in 5, giving himself sames in both 6 and 8. And instead, he went 5 in a way that only gave him 8, but it gave him something else he valued even more. There was a Midas game from forever ago where I thought, what is Akiyama doing? Because there was a corner, I don't have the game to bring up, but there was a corner starter, and Akiyama had this huge double setup in 5, and I was just oh, of course he's going to play that. And he played this completely different card in 5, and I felt did he just miss that the other card set things up? And the answer is no, he did not. I missed what he was actually trying to do. Now, it's not always better. I think, in that instance, much like the Seto game, I think the moves were similar value. Mine might have even been a touch better. But that doesn't really matter to explaining what we're doing here And it shows how Akiyama can find so many more effective moves in 5 than most people do, because most people have a requirement of setting up a certain amount of synergy. And he is willing to play moves in 5 that set up far less synergy, but find something else. And he does so incredibly effectively with a good win rate and successfully getting pressure in good positions against great players. That he took this against Turds, and, that it's Turds who has to be careful. There's only a few moves that tie here, is pretty sweet. And that this move, which looks really obvious, but Turds actually only has one tie in this position, he has to walk into the combo, is tricky to find. So Akiyama finds ways to do this really effectively. I think it's a cool and different way of thinking, and I'm curious if anyone else really thinks like this, or if it's something unique to Akiyama here. Because it's definitely not how I think, and it's a cool idea, and I'd kind of like to try it out. It feels scary to me, but I hope I've explained it in a way that seems interesting and compelling. And congrats to him for finding something that he's using effectively so different than how I see other players playing these moves. Because again, I've seen this a whole bunch of times where I just thought he must have missed the obvious setup. But how could he have? But he must have, because why would he play the much worse setup? And again, the answer is that I was just wrong, that I was missing what he was doing. And so, yeah, a very interesting play from Akiyama. And I think it can look like he's playing like other players do, but it has fundamentally different things he's checking for. And that he checks for really well.